As we reported earlier, the Trump administration has reportedly told members of Congress that it has reached a deal with the huge Chinese tech firm ZTE. For more on that and the rest of the Trump agenda, I'm joined now by the White House Director of Legislative Affairs, Mark Short. Mark Short, welcome back
Thanks,
to the
Judy.
NewsHour.
Thanks for having me.
So on the ZTE story, we're hearing there's been a deal, but as you know, when the president first announced there might be some accommodation, a lot of pushback from members of Congress, especially from Republicans, saying this is the wrong thing to do. We hear Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, saying this is a company that ignores U.S. laws, crushes U.S. companies with no mercy, spies and steals.
I think that there's no president who's going to be tougher on China than this president. This president's going to make sure that they're no longer stealing intellectual property. And I think what you're going to see forthcoming from the Commerce Department are very significant penalties against ZTE, both financial as well as governance and restructuring. But Secretary Ross will be making that announcement in the coming days. It's important to recall there's two different tracks here. One is a Commerce Department on the civil side. One is a DOJ investigation on the criminal side. There's a lot more to happen on ZTE, but rest assured, this administration is going to make sure they're held accountable for their actions and making sure that there's no longer intellectual property theft.
So while we're talking about trade, let's turn to the economy and to taxes. You, I think others, briefed some reporters today on plans for a potential tax cut proposal later this year. It's all about, as I understand it, making a middle-class tax cut permanent. But what I want to ask you, Mark Short, is Bloomberg News is reporting today, and this is information that's been collected, the corporate tax cut that was passed last December has led to something like companies in the S&P 500 saving $30 billion in the first 3 quarters of this year is the projection. Almost 50% of the total growth in these companies. In other words, an enormous growth in the profit margins of these companies. At the same time, individuals haven't seen a lot of change.
Well, actually, we're very comfortable with the growth that we're seeing. We think it's benefiting a lot of Americans. When you have unemployment at 3.9%, the lowest point in 18 years, the lowest historic number for African American unemployment, the lowest ever for Hispanic American unemployment. I think that the lowest unemployment claims in 44 years, a lot of it's driven by the growth of the tax plan. And over 5 million Americans have either received a bonus or a wage increase since the tax plan was passed in law just 6 months ago. So we're very confident the American voters and the Americans who are beneficiaries of this tax plan know that this is benefiting the economy and helping the economy to grow. And lastly, in April, we had the largest surplus on record in American history. That's a result of the growth and the revenues coming into the federal government because of the tax plan.
Was it the administration's intention that companies get such a huge boost out of that tax cut? And are you concerned about Republicans saying they're worried about what all this does to the deficit?
Keep in mind that the reason for the corporate tax relief is that countries across the globe were reducing their corporate rates significantly below the United States. Therefore, jobs were leaving. Companies were relocating overseas. We are now basically in the median average. We're not that much lower than most countries. And in many cases, the countries we're competing with, the most industrialized, are actually lower than the corporate rate of 21% we now have in the United States. So absolutely, it was absolutely part of our plan, and we think that it's producing the growth that we wanted.
Let's turn to immigration. A couple of measures have been moving through Congress, keep running into stumbling blocks. The House of Representatives failed to move ahead on a farm bill that included some immigration proposals, a little complicated to explain. But has the White House taken a position on one of the immigration proposals that Republicans are looking at?
Judy, we've taken pretty vocal positions about what we want to see on the immigration front. And the president's been clear. He wants to find a permanent solution for the DACA population. He believes that they are working. Obviously, to get a DACA permit, they have to be abiding by the law in this country, and they're productive. And we should provide permanent solution to them. At the same time, we're trying to get security for our border. And that's basically the marriage that we need to get to make sure that there's a plan. And we are continuing to work with the House of Representatives. We tried a plan in the United States Senate. I think immigration is an incredibly political issue, and unfortunately, it's often not driven by what's in the best interest of the country.
You mentioned DACA, which, of course, the children of undocumented immigrants. But in connection with that, right now, there is stepped-up enforcement and prosecution of people coming across the border. There have been some stories about this in the last few days. Families coming across, children separated from their parents, reporting that some of these children are being treated very badly, abused. Is the administration comfortable with what the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice are doing in how they treat these families?
We believe that Secretary Nielsen and the Attorney General are doing a great job in helping us secure the border with the limitations they have on them. In many cases, the separation of the child and the parents is something that's produced because our laws are so bad. They tie the hands of the Secretary of Homeland Security. When you have things like catch and release that force you, when someone comes inside our country and is apprehended, you are forced to release them with an assumption they're going to show up for a court date at a later time. These laws are ridiculous, and you've heard the president make his case on them. There's also laws about other than Mexicans, so that if you're a Mexican, there's one set of rules, and if you're coming from Guatemala or El Salvador, there's a totally different set of rules that allows them to establish asylum. It's ridiculous. We need to fix it.
So, but are you comfortable? Because some of these stories are just, I think people are saying this is just unconscionable, the way these children are being treated.
In many cases, these stories are investigated, and I think that what Secretary Nielsen and also HHS has a role here in making sure they're provided with the right protection, particularly for the children. We're taking every step we can to make sure that it's done as humanely as possible.
I want to come back quickly to the Trump agenda in the Congress. As I mentioned, the House of Representatives having a lot of difficulty passing that farm bill a few days ago under the leadership of Paul Ryan, who's announced he's retiring later this year. He's a lame duck, essentially. Are you concerned the president's agenda, that you can get anything through in these divided times among Republicans in the Congress?
Judy, we've actually had a quite historic record over 17 months. It's not just the tax relief you talked about. It's also repealing the individual mandate. It's confirming more circuit court judges at this point than any administration before. It's providing the largest military increase in the history of our country. It's also providing additional funding for border security, the first new funding for a wall in 10 years. It's providing 10% increase in ICE. There's been quite a significant legislative accomplishment that's been achieved. Unfortunately, I think the media is too often covering the ups and downs inside the White House and the palace intrigue and not focus on actually what we're accomplishing for the American people.
Do you think you'll have a better shot at getting what you want, at Republicans getting their agenda accomplished, if once Paul Ryan leaves, say a Freedom Caucus member is elected Speaker of the House, assuming the Republicans keep control?
I think the president enjoys great relationships with Jim Jordan, with Mark Meadows, members of Freedom Caucus. He has a terrific relationship with Kevin McCarthy and also a good relationship with Speaker Ryan. We'll make sure that we're able to continue to produce for the American people either way.
Mark Short, White House Legislative Director, so much to ask you about.
Thanks,
we'll have
Judy.
you back again.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.